Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our workshop. My name is Jacob Cummings. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a freshman here at WashU. I've also been a note taker at some of the other workshops, and I have a few housekeeping notes before we begin. This workshop is number 26, Informing Policy in the Math, sharing science notes with decision makers and using social media to build agency. This is a 1-hour workshop. We will conclude at 11:30 a.m. If you're looking for a different workshop, now is your time to relocate. With that, let me introduce today's presenters. Taylor M. Harris is a grad student at Washington University. Jean Nguyen is Associate Director of the Training Communities at Science and Communication Lab. And Brittany Whitley is the Executive Director of Most Policy Initiative. With that, it's all yours.
All right. I'm going to start us off real quick with an introduction, and then I'm going to hand it over to our friends, the Climate Changes. All right, so thank you all for being here today. Thanks for sticking around to the last session of the summit. We're really excited to be here. My name is Brittany Whitley. I'm the Executive Director at Most Policy Initiative. If you're a social media user, this is a great time to get our social credentials. We are a 501c nonprofit located in Columbia, Missouri, and our goal is to provide nonpartisan research information to state lawmakers in Missouri to help them make evidence-based decisions. So I'm going to be talking in the second half of this workshop about what we do, producing what we call science notes, and how we use that to engage. But before I do that, I'm going to turn it over to T and Taylor. Thank you, Brittany.
So we were put in a session together, and actually whenever the organizers asked, would you present together, do you know each other? We actually do. And so it was a really nice opportunity to talk about our work. And we actually collide a lot in terms of the work that we do. So we typically have 3 areas that we engage in. One is with educators and the students in terms of education. We really encourage community action. And then finally inform, talk about policy change. So most is going to talk about the first and the third buckets, and we're going to talk about the first and the second buckets. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the work that we do in terms of communications, and then we'll talk about policy, and then there will be a chance for action, right? Because that's kind of one of the themes of the conference as well. Okay, so the Climate Changes is a community of scientists and educators and organizers. And we really tell stories about water and air quality and how it affects our everyday actions. And it began, the grant application began as this idea of a choose your own story. How many of y'all had the choose your own story book whenever you were kids? Yeah, right. And the idea is that you were excited to take the next step. And so we wanted to use that inspiration for our Climate Changes channel. So we have tried out different series where we say, hey, this is the next step, because we all care about different things, right? We have different motivations, we have different habits, as we've heard in other talks. And so if you're interested, you can check out the channel later. Taylor just put up a series about air quality, and we'll say, if this is what you care about, do you want to check the video on, taking a walking survey of sources of air pollution in your neighborhood, or do you really want to learn more about the data? And the goal is then that by the end, they'll watch all the videos, right? I mean, it's short form, it's just a minute or two. And so that is the whole spirit of our channel. And so the messages that we have for the community, this is our team. This is me, Taylor, and Talia. Talia is a student here, so she couldn't make it today, but she's our main editor for the channel. And Kelly and Liv are our team from Texas, and they mostly focus on the water quality on the Texas team, so we're bi-state. And a fun fact is Kelly and I have known each other since we were 7. And so this is an idea that was born over the pandemic. We were like, why don't we do this thing that really matters? We're all at home. How can we inspire each other? And we co-wrote the grant together. And so this is all made possible. And a really fun thing is that we're participating in helping National Geographic has this slingshot challenge right now, where students can record 1-minute stories about actions that you can take in your community, innovative solutions. So we're supporting Nat Geo as well in terms of what is good storytelling. So that's really fun. And when they followed our channels, we're like, oh my God. Okay. So in terms of the community engagement and the community action, we've been working with 3 groups in the past year. And so this is Black Girls Do STEM, and we work with Metropolitan Congregations United and WashU, and we work with Peace Warriors in East St. Louis. So with each one, there's a little bit of a different, community action, and it's based on what that community wanted. And so we came in, and with Black Girls Do STEM, they have a monthly series where they teach a skill, and they were really interested in teaching GIS to students, Geographic Information Systems. It's really big in St. Louis right now. There's a lot of new degree programs going up around it, and a lot of education around this work. And so we came in, and I'll talk about the next slide here, but we talk about GIS in terms of air quality, use purple air. For the Metropolitan Congregations United, they already had an initiative where they're putting air monitors around the city. And they have worked with 2 different kinds of air monitors, and they also collaborate with Jay Turner's lab at WashU. And so what we do is, here's Talia here, we attend the installations and we film them, and then we edit them so that they're a way to show community members that it's really easy if you wanted to put it up. One of the most common questions is, where do you put it up? And so we also donate a lot of air monitors to this cause, and then try to make it easy for people to see how to set it up. And with the Peace Warriors, they are impacted largely by the industry and the waste industry in East St. Louis. So we're talking with them about climate storytelling. And they actually already have a really powerful way that they work. They teach Dr. Reverend King's philosophy of nonviolence. And so through the principles of nonviolence, they've been able to bring down the number of fights in their high schools by almost 80 or 90%. So they have a very powerful way that they already work. And so in talking with them, right, healthy air is the right to life. And so it just made sense when well, again, we're not doing any of this, it's just supporting the work that is done in the community. So here is, we have a bit.ly too for people who want to just go straight to this purple air map. This shows some of the air monitors. So a yellow dot is where a purple air monitor is, and then on the website you can click it, and then you can see what it looks like day to day in terms of the air quality. And we use this map. This is the map that the Metropolitan Congregations United and WashU is trying to fill out, right? So they're trying to fill out the map. But we also use this to teach Black Girls Do STEM about geographic information systems and air quality. So we get here, and then we talk about what is air quality, and then they walk around and they are able to identify what could possibly be sources of air pollution in their neighborhood. So how do we turn this into our short form video? Taylor's going to.
Okay, hi everyone. So in addition to the fun that we get to have engaging with people in the community, we also get to have a lot of fun putting our content out there onto social media. And today specifically, we'll be discussing the content that we put onto TikTok and Instagram. So why create content in the first place for social media? Like, why not just do the work? Well, a great example would be all of us sitting in this room right now. Here or in this conference, for example, we've all been learning and sharing valuable information. We're probably all going to go leave, have lunch, and then go report back to our respective groups and continue that conversation. But the conversation stays within this collective, right? We're not reaching a lot of people. So by spreading your message on social media, you can increase your reach and the exposure for the things that you find important. So that's number one thing. But also we've turned to social media to deliver info in simple, short ways. So air quality is really important, right? But with social media, we're encouraged to break that information down into short content so people get the big picture and also realize why it's important for them. And also, we want to meet people where they are. I think we're all guilty of occasionally scrolling on our phone from time to time on social media. And believe it or not, people actually turn to social media for their info and their news. So beyond like the ridiculous funny stuff, it's cool to see some informative educational content on social media too. So what do we post on TikTok and Instagram specifically? We post short linked videos for TikTok and IG, and we include interviews with people throughout the community. We do literature reviews. We also post like relatable and related quotes, and also public service announcements. And we like to include sort of intro intros to like basic topics, like what is an air quality index? How can you find it? Just basic things so people can get familiar with terms. And like T mentioned, we also record those air monitor installations so people can like actually see the work that we're doing. And so we wanted to mention a few things that we've had to consider in bringing our work to social media and that you might want to consider too if you decide that you want to spread your message as well. And the primary thing is engagement. This word is not up on this presentation because it's a little nitty gritty, but I'm going to say it anyway. And that word is algorithm, okay? And in order to get a lot of engagement and to gain followers, you need to be on top of the algorithm, okay? And one of the ways to get higher engagement is to use trending audio, to use short, catchy videos if you can, but the shorter the better. And also just consider the length. And when we say words like trendy, we just mean things that people sounds or maybe templates that are being actively used a lot by people on social media. So a platform like TikTok will say, oh, this trend has been used by 100 people in the last hour. And the other videos that decide to use that sound, we're just gonna push it in front of people. So that's a great way to increase your engagement. Also wanted to discuss very quickly some of the challenges that we've been working through in going on to TikTok and IG. And one of those is follower privileges. So like your account has different privileges based on how many followers you have. I think the magic number for TikTok is like 1,000 followers. Once we reach 1,000 followers, we can like add a website link into our bio. And you just, I guess, get to utilize the app more with more followers. Also a challenge is getting over those on-camera nerves. And also hearing your voice too. That's the thing that really gets me. I can record by myself in my room all day, but when T comes and like has the camera like this, it's really, it gets scary. And also choosing your voice. So on our channel, we include everybody on our team. I would say that everyone on our team has videos on our channel. But if you decide to go on social media, you need to decide what's your voice. Is it going to be you? Is it going to be a team member? Is it going to be everyone? And lastly, creating and posting consistently, because you can make these phenomenal, extravagant, and very educational videos and post it. But what about tomorrow and the next day and next month, right? So you have to stay consistent on these platforms to really gain exposure. And so what about impact? As I mentioned before, reach is like one of the #1 reasons why we want to turn to social media. And here we just included a few numbers on some of the reach we've had recently. So since we started our TikTok account a year ago, we've made at this point, more than 137 videos. But within just the past month, from January to February, we've accumulated over 8,000 views on our TikTok account. And on Instagram, we've reached almost 5,000 individual accounts. And on Facebook, with the same content, we've reached over 4,000 accounts too. So social media can be really important in spreading your message. And I think so far we've installed about 3 air monitors throughout St. Louis and have another 3 coming and have taught like lots of students. Okay, so we just wanted to quickly show you all one of our favorite videos and just pose the question, have you ever seen a journal club like this? This is a video that's on our TikTok right now.
Hey, did you know that environmental knowledge doesn't directly impact your environmental behaviors? Doubtful. Pretty sure all you need to know is about the environment, about climate change, the knowledge, the stuff.
Sorry.
Pretty sure about that. No, your attitude needs to change. Excuse me? Oh, I mean environmental attitude towards an issue like drought or something like that. I guess that makes sense. Yeah, you're getting it. Your knowledge has to make you feel something. You need an emotional response in order to make more pro-environmental behaviors. You see? Oh yes, I can see it. I can feel it. What a feeling. Making environmental action. Making it happen. What a feeling. Nailed it.
And so that was one of our team members, Liz. She makes hilarious, really good, informative videos. And this is just an example. We're trying to encourage people to know there's more than just the knowledge that you have about your environment. It's also the emotion and the passion you have about it that can really promote change.
And actually, our most popular video right now is about latitude and longitude. And it's getting shared. Students are tagging each other, like saying, learn this. Funny. And one of the things that we're doing too is we're using popular news articles and making a video about it. So that's something that is helpful. We actually just we're in the middle of making a video right now from Yale Climate Communications Group about media literacy. And we recently worked with MOST and turned some of their legislative notes into videos too. So that's been a really fun collaboration. And so with that, I guess we'll hand it over. Oh, is your middle? Okay.
Oh, so just to wrap up what we just discussed, basically we're the climate change team, and all we want to do is bring awareness to people of all ages about air quality and water quality and the implications for themselves and their own neighborhoods. And we encourage people to participate in different ways by providing that brief and engaging content. And one note that I wanted to add is that we like to keep our content positive and action-oriented. So when you watch our videos, it's not tearing you down, you know, about the troubles of the world. It's really more so to encourage you to get out there and make a difference. And we also encourage people to know that they can go and understand and learn about their air quality all on their own, either as individuals by checking their AQI simply, or collectively by getting involved with their local neighborhoods. So make sure you follow the climate change team.
There's their social media. Definitely follow them. I recommend their PFAS TikTok about her science note. It's very good. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do at MOST, how it's similar to what the climate changes are doing and what we do a little bit differently. I'll talk about how it's worked for us, and then we've saved probably 15-20 minutes at the end for questions and to have some opportunity for folks to sit at tables and talk with us about social media, science note, research ideas you might have, and ways to turn that into some form of engagement. So MOST writes what we call science notes. These are a little bit, they're kind of a version 2.0 of a standard policy brief. And I'll talk about why these are unique, but I think I wanted to bring some parallels to what T and Taylor were talking about. These are also largely educational tools. We're trying to get people to engage with scientific information so that they can use that to inform their policy decisions. We don't do as much direct community engagement, which means the number of people who sees these notes is definitely going to be lower than 4,000 people. But we do targeted engagement with our state policymakers and state and local community leaders so that kind of some of those key decision makers in the policy process have access to this information. So I think the type of work that we do kind of works really well in parallel. You can use some of the social media education to do some coalition building in your community, and then maybe use a science note to turn that excitement that you've generated into some sort of policy action that you're interested in. MOST policy initiative is unique amongst policy research organizations for a few different reasons. The most important of which is that these notes are nonpartisan and don't offer policy recommendations. And now I know that's probably going to make some of you itch a little bit and go, oh, but I know what I want them to do. We should tell them what they should do. This isn't to say that you can't do that. The goal of science notes, though, are to let people know kind of what is the scope of information they need to understand. What are the trade-offs, right? Everybody has different values. And so one legislator might really care about the health impacts of a policy, and another lawmaker might really care about how much money is this going to save me at the end of the day. And maybe a different one is worried about some of the species of fish that they've been used to fishing for the past 50 years are disappearing from their lakes, and how do we get those back? So we're kind of helping people think kind of big picture trade-offs. I think this is especially useful if you work at a nonprofit or an academic institution or a kind of local government where you have to really toe the line and be careful about how you talk about some of these issues so as not to come off as advocating or lobbying. These notes are also how we do this for the notes that we write, is all of our notes are written based on legislator requests. We've been writing science notes since, I might have written one of the first science notes in September 2019. And since then or 2020, and since then we've published over 220 science notes, all requested by members of the Missouri General Assembly. 70% of our requests come from Republicans, 30% come from Democrats, which is basically exactly what our political breakdown is in the state. So what that tells me is, it's not just a cute idea that we thought would be fun and nobody else finds useful. It tells me that there's this real gap in quality research information for the people that make our decisions. And we're helping them fill that. One of the things we ask legislators is, why do you like this? You know, if we gave you any sort of information, what would you like and not like about it? This nonpartisan element and the kind of like trusted relationships we build with lawmakers has really been key for our engagement. And so in addition to writing a very beautiful and well-researched note, we also have to go to lawmaker offices and talk with them and let them know, I'm an individual who is interested in what you care about, and I'm trying to help you, and let's talk through this in a way so that you can tell I'm not trying to push my agenda on you. They're short, they're never more than 2 pages, well, 1 page front and back. And they're always written for non-expert audiences. So the idea is you have a lawmaker who just got thrown onto the Environment Committee, and they're a lawyer who did finance law for the past 40 years. And we have people who get into that situation and they call us and go, I want to make the best decision, but I don't know anything about this. Can you help me understand what is the scope of the problem in the state? You know, these lobbyists, a good example of this is with CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations. A lawmaker came to us and says, I have 2 groups of people that come into my office. One group tells me CAFOs are the best thing that we could ever do, and it's going to save us a bunch of money and bring a lot of jobs to our community. And the other group tells me that CAFOs are horrible and should never exist, and everything they do is wrong. Both of those seem kind of extreme. Can you help me figure out what's going on here and where are the kind of levers that policy can pull? The other big thing, every single note we published, all 220 plus, are always on our website, publicly available for free. So that means that while we're doing most of the engagement with state lawmakers, community groups, students, teachers, really anybody who wants these can access these and then apply them to what they're working on. Because we are in Missouri, I think a lot of the work we do is relevant to a lot of our Midwestern partners that are here at the summit. And so while we might have some specific Missouri data that you need to replace with Illinois data, you can maybe use some of the bones. I've already talked a little bit about this. This is one of our fellows, Dr. Ramon Martinez, talking about a science note. I think this was about cannabis legalization. Numbers already up to 220. We just pushed out a science note yesterday about nuclear energy in Missouri. There was a hearing about ways to make it easier to incentivize more nuclear energy production in Missouri. Talked about the breakdown, and then we provide informational testimony. So again, don't say vote for this, don't say vote against this, but research information. There's a couple of key principles of science notes that I think even if what you end up using to engage isn't called a science note, I think are the most important pieces. That's what I wanted to focus on today. The first thing, probably the most important, is to be upfront with key takeaways and limitations. It is we train a lot of fellows, and one of the things I think that always frustrates them is this idea that I just spent a week producing this beautiful note, and I saw the lawmaker look at it, go like this, and then put it down, and then that was probably the last they engaged with it. And it stinks, honestly, as a researcher, as someone who cares about this, to see somebody engage with it that small. But that's how they're making a lot of their decisions. They get tons and tons of information, lots of people have things. So we really try to make these as like skimmable and conclusions up front as possible. So our section headers tell you what the main takeaway is rather than kind of tease you and say, read this to figure out what this is. That's how I learned to write. I thought it was really cool. Turns out, no, we don't have time for that. At the top of every note, we also have these research highlights. The idea is if you wanted to read nothing else, you could read those 3 points and those will tell you the main takeaways. We also put up at the top what the question is we're trying to answer. So if I have a note that just says PFAS, what am I trying to answer about this? This was specifically a question about the health impacts. And so it tells the reader, if you're looking for ecological, environmental impacts, this probably isn't going to be the note to get it, so they don't waste their time. Also, lots of like bullet pointing, subsections, anything you can do to make it as skimmable and kind of indexable as possible. The other thing I mentioned before is talking about trade-offs and related policies. This limitations piece, I think, is something we don't do enough in the policy space, and that is being really clear about what we don't know. So usually a lawmaker will say, Texas just implemented this policy, seems like a great idea. Can you look into other states that have done this and see if it works? And almost always the answer to that question is most of these policies were just introduced a couple of years ago, and there's no way to know what the long-term impacts are. These are the things we want to measure if we could, but we don't know. Lawmakers have told us they love how upfront we are about that, and that it makes the information more trustworthy, that we don't try to pretend like we know all the answers. Sometimes there's a lot of information, like maybe you want a big table that says, these states do this policies and this and this and this. We always put that in something extra that we can hand them so that the people who want the details can get it, but the main readers don't have to. Another kind of key piece, this might be the last one, I can't remember, is being transparent about where you're getting your information from. So when we do this work to kind of keep that nonpartisan lens, we're really thinking about government sources, peer-reviewed journal articles, and nonpartisan think tanks. We also put it in the main text, so you can tell this is EPA data we're looking at right here. This isn't Brittany's friend told her while she was having a beer the other day that they think this happened. This is what it is. You can click on this, it'll take you to exactly where we're looking. So the idea, again, is we're not hiding anything, we're trying to be fully upfront. I'm going to wrap up by just talking about different ways to use science notes. So hopefully I've convinced you this is a useful tool for most. And then the question is to try to figure out how science notes can be used to kind of help your work. So I've broken this down for kind of different purposes. And so this first one's kind of a pet project of mine, and that's using science notes for student engagement. And this is actually something WashU has been really helpful kind of getting started. The first thing is all of our notes are on our website. They're free, they're 2 pages. They don't have a lot of kind of heavy jargon. So they can be a teaching tool. You can say, we're going to start talking about PFAS this week, and I'm going to give you some journal articles, but let's read the science note as a primer to make sure we're all on the same page before we get into the details. We also have a lot of places doing this, which is basically creating science note assignments. And so I just spoke with a graduate class last month who, at the end of their graduate seminar, their final assignment is writing a science note. So they get to pick a topic, research it, and then we can, in some cases, publish those on our website and help with the peer review process. Maybe you don't want your students to write a full note, but you want practice on peer reviewing. You can have them look through and try to find places in their peers' notes that are maybe not as nonpartisan as you would think, or have more loaded language. The amount of times that I edit out the word importantly from science notes, I'm like, no, we're not, you're making an assumption there. So classrooms, lots of great uses for science notes. Happy to talk with anybody about what this might look like for you. Thinking about this community engagement piece, and this might be kind of one of the climate change's intersection places, is let's say they're putting out some really cool videos about pollution somewhere around this region that wants to be addressed. Like, oh, that's super interesting. Well, perhaps a group of people who are sharing these videos can get together to create a science note or something like a science note that they can use to inform kind of evidence-based public testimony or to give feedback to other people who are running the program. We also really encourage people to practice evidence-based advocacy. Most does no advocacy, no lobbying. We don't think advocacy or lobbying is bad. It's just not within our role. But that doesn't mean you can't use a science note to kind of incorporate some of those key principles. Maybe you are going to recommend a policy position, but you still want to include transparent references and limitations so that you can build trust with that person. The last piece, my favorite piece, is the policy engagement piece. And really, there's a lot of different ways to do this. Again, we're mostly doing information, but maybe you're working with a group that's trying to get their state lawmaker to draft a bill about a topic that you feel really passionately about. Or maybe you want your lawmaker to vote a certain way. How can you use the principles of what we do with these science notes to engage in those conversations? Same thing, educating people about policy alternatives. This is the most sweet spot really right here. And I do want to emphasize that science notes are our special sauce. They're great. I feel like I go to conferences and talks all the time and tell people how wonderful they are. They do not work without this piece though. You have to have those trusted relationships and engagement over time. I think so many of our other workshops during the summit have kind of started talking about different ways to do that. I was just at a talk about public health and drought and ways that folks engage communities there. Trust with the lawmakers and the communities that they serve is important. Without that, no one's going to care. They're going to be pretty notes that sit on a website that no one ever looks at. I believe I actually am closing with the picture of our team. This is our team. We've shrunk a little bit since we took this picture, but in front of the Capitol down in Jefferson City. I have business cards and my emails here. I'd love to talk with any of you if we don't get time to chat during this workshop. And like I kind of mentioned, I just wanted to be really explicit about this ask. If you can think of a way that your group might be able to partner with us to use science notes, whether that's a broader impact for a research grant or a collaborative grant between another community-based group and our group, please let us know, because this is kind of a real future direction we see for our work, is partnering and kind of looking for related funding streams so that we can kind of do the research and then other people can hit different places of the engagement pipeline. So with that, T, do you want to?
Yeah, before we do the call to action, I wanted to share two things. One is, so Brittany talked about how science notes are used as maybe a graduate seminar assignment. I do a lot of teaching, and one of the places I teach is the community college, and when we host high school interns last spring, we had from high school interns from a couple different schools, actually, and they worked with Taylor and did some plant CRISPR, and they also wrote science notes. They picked their own topics, and they picked idling and cannabis, and I forget some other ones related to maternal health. But then they did a poster session, and some of them did it on the plant CRISPR, and some of them were so excited that they did their poster on writing a science. So this can be done at the high school too. And whenever Brittany's talking about engagement, one of the community organizations that we work with, after hearing about policy notes, whenever they went to a town hall with a representative, they requested that their representative request a science note from the policy. So that's kind of like we're connected, and the work is done through these conversations that you have with the people in your neighborhood.
So do we want to take questions for a little bit and then split up to talk about how we'll do the engagement piece at the end is I'll go sit at a table, these two will go sit at tables, and then you can find and talk to us about kind of ways that you might want to staff your work. Oh, there you go.
For thinking about for the engagement piece when we go to the table. So
Does anyone have any questions before we do that though?
Yeah, my name is Joe. I'm with the Corps of Engineers, and I'm curious, it sounds like a lot of this would be really useful for even engaging some representatives on the work that we do in the ecosystem and other work, but I'm curious if you take requests from legislators that are not at the state level, but are like at a more local level.
That's a great question. So right now, you can stand up. Right now, we are not taking science note requests from anyone other than state lawmakers, but that's purely because I have a team of less than 5 people. So those notes, all those notes getting put out are written with that small team. We would love to move. And so I think this model is really adaptable to set up in a local setting. We actually have some interest to potentially pilot a local model of this, like in St. Louis, where we would do something similar. Just need some money to do that, but everything was done properly. But absolutely, I think it's workable. Our choice of limitation is purely based on capacity. Yeah, so the question is, are there places outside of Missouri that are doing this work? I can answer this for most, and then you guys can for what y'all are doing. We are part of a network of, I want to say, maybe 8 states that have fellowship programs specifically for graduate or PhD students who are transitioning into policy. So that's primarily the people that are doing most of our science note writing right now. We are the only program like this, though, that is it that we know of. There's always new programs, so I don't want to pretend they don't exist. In the Midwest, a lot of the other kind of programs that are really established in this place are in California, New Jersey, Connecticut. They're typically associated with bigger universities rather than standalone nonprofits. So we are not, the idea for providing research to lawmakers was not ours, but the idea of how we do it is unique to Missouri. You guys want to talk about kind of overlap in what you do in other regions?
Yeah, we look to amplify the message for a lot of other organizations, and so we are also grant funded and we're going to make Zoom, but we're looking at other funding mechanisms, but mostly amplifying the work of other people.
So you said, keep it to one specific question, which I love. But I assume that there are many questions about a topic. So how do you, limit yourself to just a couple of questions? And do you create a separate note for each of those?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question. This question is about you want to have a note. I showed you what our question is at the top. How do you narrow that down? Questions are usually big. They have lots of things. One thing we do is at the request stage, we're asking lawmakers, tell me more about this. My very first science note request was schools in Missouri suck. I want them to do better. I think we have too many universities. What's going on? And that was the request. And so I like to use it as an example because then what I ended up talking about is, okay, what does a failing school look like to you, right? What are the metrics that you're interested in? Are we worried about people not starting higher education? Are we worried about job placement? Or are we worried about matches between people who graduate and the jobs that exist? That helps narrow it down a little bit. Sometimes it's really hard to do. Usually what we'll do though, if we realize the scope is getting big, we'll make multiple notes. So we just had a request about nuclear energy. Supposed to be one note, got too big. So the first one is social and economic impacts of nuclear energy production. And the second one is ways that states try to address, either incentivize or restrict new nuclear construction. So that's how we did it there. But mostly we have to ask because what I find is people don't usually know what question they want answered. They just know there's something I don't understand here. And because I don't understand it, I don't know what question I want to ask, which I feel like that often. Do you guys ever have that with kind of scope for your videos?
I was gonna say, we took their PFAS note and we turned it into a PFAS week for our social media. So we actually created 2 videos from their note. We took a PFAS article that's in the news. So we have something about Simply Orange Juice lawsuit on PFAS. We talked about PFAS testing that actually got comments around by Johns Hopkins Health. And so that's the kind of way we take it too. If you have a message, you can, talk about it in ways that people, people care about it. So that's the way we approach that. One topic, one question. And if I can sing a little bit of most praises, because I've been there in the original journey, the way that they do things is so innovative that they are sought after as this model of writing the nonpartisan legislative note is novel in the way that policy, not climate necessarily, just policy research is done. And so they are getting noted nationally and federally to teach this method. And they're currently actually hiring themselves. So
What do you do without Steve? She's been helping our team with kind of professional development and other just support since we started. So we love her support on that. Yes, I think I put an attachment in the Hoover materials. That's this article we recently wrote that's called How Missouri Legislators Got Their Science Notes. And it was published by a national kind of science and technology magazine. And I think that's a really good one if you're looking for a little bit more discussion about how we started, the kind of story of our founding, how we got to where we are, and then what we see as some of the major barriers to scaling up this work. If other organizations wanted to kind of, if you wanted a most in Illinois and another one in Indiana and another one in Wisconsin, we kind of tried to talk through what's been really easy for us and what's been really challenging. So of all of the attachments I uploaded, I would really recommend checking that out.
And in Illinois, it would be built.
I
Pretty good.
do like that. Can I see another hand?
I was curious what your peer review process is like, and who's doing that, how do you identify reviewers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, our base peer review process is all internal, done by our staff. Our staff of all PhDs. So a science note gets reviewed by at least 3 other PhDs before getting published. Not necessarily topic area experts though. So the peer review process is really trying to get at that kind of where's their charged language or subtle recommendation, we call it shadow advocacy. Trying to get that part out and then asking questions of, well, I see you're highlighting this, is there research about this? Whenever we can, we do try to get external peer reviewers. I think they're really helpful to have. Our turnaround time during legislative session, we usually get a request Thursday or Friday or Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Most academics that we work with are like, love you guys, but no. And that's fair. That's volunteer work. So that's how it works right now. We just turned one around in 24 hours yesterday, so.
Are either of the organizations connected to AGU Sharing Science?
I had met with somebody from there once,
Uh-huh.
but I should reconnect with them. Are you
Yeah.
with Sharing Science or do you just know?
I just worked with them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Good reminder.
AGU is American Geophysical, is it geophysical? Geophysical, okay.
They have a really good program. Let's plug them.
Yeah.
AGU Sharing Science program.
We'll see them in maybe about a few weeks. So we'll let you have a big. Yeah. I really have a question here.
Oh.
Thank you. So, first of all, I love this and I love the policy notes and then the social media aspects of it. And one thing I'm curious about, because I think, don't want to speak for everyone, but probably many of us have observed that many issues devolve into a very black and white, like this bad, this good. And as we know, a lot of issues are a lot more nuanced than that, or, have trade-offs and have different impacts for different people. And so I would just love to hear any like success stories or wins or cool stories from either of you, like on the constituent or lawmaker side, where you've seen that your science notes or the social media has led people to think about things in a more nuanced, balanced way.
Thinking of a lot of like personal growth. You guys
Well,
can start.
I wouldn't think we know yet about any changes, but we do have a trade-off stance on our, because that's something we care about too, is like presenting these nuances. And so one of our, Kelly, this is her big thing, she's an environmental scientist, at the end of her, she thought she always was, there's always trade-offs. And then, and actually the kids do it now whenever they are picking restaurants or cartoons. There's always trade-offs. It's something that we can present to.
I'm having difficulty thinking of a success story. We have had lawmakers, not that we don't have success, I'm trying to think of a specific example. We have had lawmakers tell us, like, for example, I'm gonna request this note to see how you handle it. So for example, somebody gave us a request and said, write a science note about COVID vaccines, and it was when Delta variant was big, and about the Delta variant, and basically told us this test. He's requested like 3 or 4 other notes since then, so we passed it. Sometimes it's explicit like that. I think other times, I'm thinking about, we just testified on or submitted testimony on the foreign ownership of agricultural land discussion. One of the things I think that was important in that conversation is a lot of the discourse that you see in the media is about kind of anti-Chinese sentiment and challenges around there. One of the things we learned when putting together the note is that I think it's Italian wind power has a bunch of agricultural land in Missouri. And so like Smithfield, yes, has a bunch of land, but like this is a part of the story I didn't know. And we actually got contacted in that example, use this to humble brag. We got contacted by 538, to one of their senior political reporters who said, I found your science note and I don't understand this topic and I have to write an article about why all these states are introducing foreign ownership of agricultural land bills. Can I talk to somebody on your team to just like figure out what's happening. And for us, that's exactly where we want reporters to engage with us. That's published, by the way. The reporter's name is Monica Potts. There's a quote from one of our fellows in there. There's a 538 article about foreign ownership. But lots of stuff personally, like I think I've just become a more open-minded individual doing this work. I thought I had a lot more black and white opinions than I did. I'm like, oh, actually, this is more nuanced than I thought, which I feel like if we could all get to that stage, things would start going better.
We have a question here and then in the back.
I was just curious, specifically about the science note, the folks who are putting together the science note, the original authors before the peer review, those are your fellows?
Yep.
What's their background in their PhD? You know, do you have a mix? Is it mostly public health professionals?
Yeah, great question. So the question is about like kind of where the people who write our science notes come from, where our fellows come from. Right now, the requirement is, and this might change in the future, but right now fellows have to have a PhD, they have to have a terminal degree in their field. We mostly recruit, not intentionally, but most of our applicants come from STEM fields, but they don't have to be an expert in the field that they're going to be working on policy. So for example, I have a PhD in biochemistry and I joined most of our education and workforce development fellow. And so the idea is that you're bringing in the research and the analytical skills to do this work and some of the communication skills. And then the topic area, we rely on local experts to inform what we're doing. And so rather than me trying to go and be like, I need to understand all this, I'm calling whoever, you know, creates the Missouri maternal mortality health report and say, hey, tell me what we need to know to make that easier.
My question is, for the, on the communication side, for those of us who've maybe been raised in very like professional and formal communication, do you have any suggestions for how to like laugh? My instinct would be to like really script it and plan it out and try to produce it, but I just feel like you can't make enough content fast enough if you're doing it without level of rigor.
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a few team members who also asked this. But I would say that if it's about trying to put your content out onto social media, that it should be fun. It should be, try to think about having fun and getting your point across and not that it has.
Oh, we're supposed to have fun.
Yeah. It's social, it's like social media. So you should aim to have fun first. It shouldn't be something that's stressful, because at the end of the day, you can put a lot of work and you can script all of your content, but what if you get 2 views? So you would have spent all that time on 2 views. And if it's really important to you that you do script, and if it's really important to you that you look a certain type of way, you can stick to that. But the goal here is not to overwork yourself. The goal here is just to spread the information in a way that people can relate to. So if people are not relating to some, you know, a certain form of content, having fun in the first place makes it easier to be flexible instead of being so rigid. So I would think about it that way.
I think also these are little experiments, right? And because social media is so quick, you can try different experiments every day. I know for myself, I'm one of the people on the team that digests news articles for videos. And I don't have enough space on my phone to download a one of those I forget what they're called, newscasters use them. So you can like read the teleprompter. They have really great teleprompter apps and stuff like that. What I do instead is I'll take a news article and I give myself 4 or 5 post-it notes. 4 if I'm disciplined, but 5 usually it takes. And I'll just write my note on here and then you put a post-it note and then you record a segment and then you put the next post-it note and you record a segment. And yeah, and I think that's one way to think about it being brief and fun. And some of our stuff is silly. There's one that Taylor did that did really, really well. And it was a trend where it's just like my mom said, and then it's something. So she said, my mom said, and it had something to do with water quality. And it's literally a 5-second video to drinking a glass of water. And that was it. And so we tried a dancing video. We realized that's not our style. But we tried it, and so, yeah, I think that's part of it is you as a human are very complex, and there's lots of things that you enjoy and bring that I think, into the work. That's why people are drawn to social media, because
One quick, these are all great. They're the experts here. One thing I'll say, easiest thing to make things shorter that I found from my scientific training is we are often trained as scientists to speak in the passive voice. And so it will be, according to most research, the ball was caught by Johnny on 7 out of 10 occasions, where you can just make it, Johnny catches the ball most of the time, right? So I always encourage, it's like one of the first things where if you feel like, man, I'm really like slogging through this, like check for active voice. I know it's a grammar thing. I'm not an English major, but it makes a really big difference in how things come across.
And right after this, I'm gonna ask Brittany to film that as a video and then post it.
I took a writing at another workshop and he quoted Mark Twain. I would have written a shorter letter had I had more time.
It's such a good quote. We do spend hours in the peer review process making things shorter, yeah.
Oh, and one more thing too about it being informal. Our first set of choose your own videos we made, I showed it to one of my cousins who's in high school. She goes, honestly, T, and I was like, yeah, she's like, it seems like you're trying to teach me something. Yeah, people are gonna watch that. I was like, oh, okay. Everything is fine. And so we were really surprised when Talia's latitude and longitude one, it's literally her just like looking at a map and like pointing things out, and it's not polished, right? And she's looking around and she's explaining things, and I don't know, it's just hard.
I'm commenting under it like, hey, you need to be watching this, you gotta learn this, and so, it's just the algorithm, but also, it's also what people might need in the moment.
When we try to go on Instagram and say, read this science note just published, and that's all, no one ever reads it, like 0 clicks and engagement. So you need this kind of work if you want the social media crowd, I think, to engage, because what we're trying to do on its own is not flashy for that sort of communication. Do we finish just with questions and maybe stick around a few minutes after to answer some of these?
Yeah, I have a question about the science now. It's like, when you're so passionate about a topic, like how do you maintain neutrality when you're writing? Like, is it hard?
Great question. It's extremely hard, and I always tell people when I'm training them that like the goal of doing this work, if you want to be neutral, is not to say that I have no values. I personally have a lot of values and beliefs that I think are important, and so it is a skill to kind of be agnostic when you're writing the notes. Sometimes that means I write a draft that is the Brittany version of this is dumb, this is good, this is dumb, this is good, and start from there. That's usually not too helpful for me. I usually actually look at news articles and videos from people who sit on the other side of the argument. So I kind of try to find like, what's the best possible argument against my bias to see if that can help me frame like, what's the landscape of stuff I should be looking at. But then take out words like importantly, and a lot of words like, but like it or while, but although when you put them in, you're making an assumption that it should have been this way, but it's actually this way. So I also take those out.
Is there a difference between rural and urban legislators in their requests for the notes?
That is a great question. Probably unsurprised. I'd have to look at the numbers. My guess is that we probably get more ag-related requests from rural legislators. Unsurprising. Some of our biggest champions, though, actually come from rural areas. And I haven't quite been able to figure out like correlation between love of most and other factors. There might be a little rural urban.
Can you come to Iowa?
Me too. It's really challenging, but I do think I'm like, if we can do this in Missouri, there is a lot of hope for this being valuable. But I do think that one of the things as we start to think about other states is, what are the unique features of Iowa that we might need to tweak, because most did this because Missouri wants it this way, and maybe actually Iowa has a few more nonpartisan research staff that can help out with some things, so the real gap is here. Any more questions? I love questions.
One of the things that we have some postcards here. We made it to look like a postcard. If you want to take this back to your office, it just has our socials on there, and you can come and get a bag. And the other thing is, if you would like to share the message of what you're doing for our channel, we will record it and post it for you. So we brought a camera and our microphone, and we can find a quiet corner and we can record your 15-minute message about what you do. We have a series called A Climate Change It Looks Like. And then you can lead in front of that series. So kind of amplify the work that you're doing.
Awesome. And I'll stick around up here if y'all have questions for me.
So much, everybody.
Thank you.